I'm Will Greenwald, Senior Consumer Electronics Analyst at PCMag.com. You've probably heard of 4K and HDR already. They're the two big terms in this generation of TVs. They're very similar, at least they work together very well, but they are two quite different things, and one is easy to explain, 4K. The other, HDR, is kind of hard to explain. Let's talk about 4K first. 4K is a TV resolution of 3840 by 2160 pixels. That is 4,000 horizontal pixels approximately, and approximately 2,000 vertical pixels. That is 4 times as many pixels, 4 times the resolution of HD TVs, 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080. That's 2,000 by 1,000 approximately. That means that HD TVs, the 1080p you might already have, has 2 million pixels. A 4K TV has 8 million. Now this used to be a premium technology, it was a new technology. That isn't the case anymore. Right now 4K is very well established, and basically if you get any new TV that's larger than about 40 inches, it's probably going to be a 4K TV. You're going to be hard-pressed to find any big-name, big-screen TV that is not 4K at this point. Now don't worry about your older non-4K content on your 4K TVs. Your DVDs, your Blu-rays, your broadcast television, which still does not reach 4K yet, that is going to be upscaled automatically by your TV. A computer inside the TV adjusts the pixels, so if there isn't enough information to assign values to each pixel, it just figures out, how to fill it in. There's plenty of 4K content to view right now, though. Amazon, Netflix, Google Play, iTunes, Vudu, they all have 4K movies and 4K TV shows that you can watch right now. You need a fast internet connection, but if your TV is 4K, you can probably watch it on it. For physical discs, your Blu-ray discs only have 1080p video. But Ultra HD Blu-ray, which is a new format, stores up to 4K and includes HDR, which we will talk about in a minute. The drawback is you need to get a new player. Ultra HD Blu-ray discs are not the same as Blu-ray discs. You can't put it in a Blu-ray player. You need to get an Ultra HD player, or an Xbox One S or Xbox One X. HDR, or high dynamic range, is a little bit more complicated to explain. You see, each pixel, there are 4 times as many pixels in 4K, but each pixel is assigned a certain value of color and brightness. SDR, standard dynamic range, limits that to a specific range of values. It cuts off at a certain level of black and a certain level of white because previous televisions and broadcast standards have meant that if there were any values below this certain level of very dark gray, which it treats as black, or very bright gray, which it treats as white, it clips. So all the values above that become just flat white or flat black on SDR. HDR breaks that out. So you can reach darker blacks and brighter whites because the panels can reproduce them. Now HDR isn't the same as 4K. 4K video can be HDR, but not all 4K video is HDR. A lot of 4K is going to be SDR. HDR, because there is more information in each pixel, it requires even more bandwidth. Just as importantly as expanding that range, HDR also increases the number of steps between each value of gray. So you literally have more shades of gray. Now that logic of shades of gray also applies to color. See, each pixel is assigned not only brightness, but color values, a certain amount of red, green, and blue that mixes to produce different levels of color. For standard dynamic range, or rather standard color gamut, based on broadcast standards Rec. 709, you reach a small triangle as part of a visual light spectrum. All of this light, all these different colors, are what the human eye can see, but not necessarily what a screen can reproduce. A standard dynamic range, standard color gamut TV can only reach colors within that little triangle. Now, wide color gamut can't cover the entire range of visual light, but it makes a much larger triangle. This is called Rec. 2020 standard. It is a much larger range with a lot more steps in between, so you have more varied colors, more different shades of hues, saturation. You can have so many more colors than standard dynamic range, standard color gamut, and it really comes through on the TV. Now, Rec. 2020 is still a technical goal. It is the best possible standard we're getting. It is the data that is in each pixel. Not every TV can actually get close to it. In fact, the vast majority of those screens aren't going to reach that entire triangle. They're going to reach a good chunk of it. It's going to reach much further than the standard color gamut, but won't quite hit 2020. Maybe in the next TV generation we'll have an even wider color gamut and a bigger triangle to shoot for the next range of TVs. But for now, wider color gamut and HDR still greatly expand the grays, the colors, the lights, the darks you can get in your TV for every single pixel. It doesn't change that you're looking at a 4K picture, it's the same resolution, but each pixel is a different value. And that means you can see so much more detail. You've probably experienced the soap opera effect before. It's when you're watching TV and the movement looks unnatural, almost too smooth. It looks weird to your eye. And this is very, very common, especially if you just took your TV out of the box, set the default settings, and just watched things. This is because most movies are recorded and sent at 24 frames per second, and most TV shows at 30 frames per second, which is a bit of a problem when the TV panel can refresh at 120 Hz, or 120 different pictures per second. A lot of TVs can handle this very easily, and they can make stuff look natural, but by default, they employ motion smoothing modes, which interpolate different frames between these big steps to the 24 frames or 30 frames per second to create the total number of frames that you need for the 60 or 120 Hz. The problem with that is the smoothing can look really weird and unnatural. It might look like vampires are dancing. These features are also often on by default on some level. You can adjust the features, you can tweak them to what you want, but it's really best for movies and TV shows to just turn it off. In your TV's picture menu, look for any feature called motion. Anything with motion in the word. On Sony TVs, it's called motion flow, or might just be motion in the menu system. On LG TVs, it's called true motion. On Samsung TVs, it's motion rate. Anything that says motion is going to be this feature that can make stuff look wonky. And all you need to do is go into that menu and disable it, turn it off. This will make 24-frame films and 30-frame TV shows look like 24 and 30 frames. It's not going to try to make it look like a smoother picture. And that's a much better experience when you're watching that content. This doesn't mean the mode is completely useless. If you're playing a video game or if you're watching sports, that's actually very handy to have. In fact, you'll notice if you're watching sports where there's a lot of panning back and forth, with the mode disabled, there can be a jerkiness of the horizontal scanning because it's processing that number of frames and it's not trying to smooth it. The smoothness there is actually pretty handy. So if you're watching live sports, if you're playing video games where you want the highest frame rate, it can be a good feature. But knowing where it is lets you turn it off for when you want to watch content that is not really served well by it. And if you've been watching your TV and noticed that colors are a little bit off, maybe skin tones look kind of unnatural, maybe things look a little bit too blue or too green or too pink, that's actually a very common problem that can be easily fixed. Your colors are just off, or possibly your white balance is off. Now, ideally, the best possible thing you can do is have a professional calibration done. However, this is an expensive and complicated procedure. It can cost several $100s, require special equipment, and while you can get the absolute best picture out of your TV, a lot of users aren't going to want to do that. That's totally fine. Fortunately, these days you can actually get pretty good colors out of the box if you just know what right setting to hit. Video Signals set a white point of D65, which is a white temperature of 6504 Kelvin. Without getting too much into the math, this is basically what white looks like under bright midday light in Northern Europe. It's how these standards are set. Now, most TVs tend to set that whiteness a little bit cooler because it makes it pop out more. It catches your eye when you're in the store and it can look more vivid when you're at home. It might look brighter, it might be more stunning, but it's not accurate. Your TV is probably set to standard mode, or user mode, or vivid mode is actually very common. This tends to set the color balance to cooler than it should be, and it skews the color. You just need to set the correct picture mode and the color temperature setting. The picture mode is the overarching mode that sets the brightness, darkness, and color levels of your TV. It's a bunch of automated presets that you can use for different viewing situations. Set your TV to movie mode. It might look to your eyes a little bit dimmer and a little bit warmer than you're used to. This is fine because it's actually closer to what is intended when you're watching a film or movie. Now, this might not fix everything, and if you really want just the vivid, bright colors, you can still get accurate colors and not tamp down the color range as you might with a movie mode. For this, you need to change the color temperature setting. Go into your TV's picture settings and look for a setting called color temperature, or white balance. It should give you a selection of choices like cool, warm, and normal, or possibly computer. And what you want to do is just set that level to warm, or user, or calibrated. And it might look different from what you're used to at first, but it is a more accurate color. We know because we've run the tests. We've measured every single range of red, blue, green, and white, and figured out what's closest to the correct color value. And that means which white is closest to D65. Again, this is an easy fix and one you might not even know you need to do. Have you ever looked at your TV and thought, that picture looks a little bit squished, or you think something's getting cut off from the edges? This is a very common problem when you're using very default settings on your TV and using a bunch of different sources. You can fix this very easily if you know how to find the setting to change. The setting is picture size, which has a bunch of different names depending on the manufacturer and interface. If you aren't sure what menu item to look at the options in it. See if there are choices like wide, zoom, stretch, just fit, or 16:9. These are very different common values to put in this specific mode. For any modern game system, media hub, Blu-ray player, cable box, satellite box, you want to turn off any sort of zoom or stretch or wide feature. In the picture size menu, look for a value called direct or just fit or something sounding similar, something that is not wide or zoom or stretch or crop. This will probably fix the squishiness of your TV. The picture will be mapped to the full ends of the TV, all to the edge, and if it is the right aspect ratio to begin with, it should look fine. There is another problem that can happen when you're using unfamiliar technology or ones that aren't necessarily so easily identified by your TV. If you connect a computer to your TV, this is actually very common. It's called overscan, and it's a remnant of broadcast television technology. When TV shows were broadcast before everything went digital, there was additional information that expanded beyond the frame of the TV. This is known as overscan, and TVs were designed to cut it off, to crop it. And many TVs have that overscan feature still built in. And they might default to it if you're plugging in a computer and it doesn't know what to do with it. If you don't have an overscan mode in the picture size setting, look for an overscan item somewhere around the same part of the menu. If overscan is enabled, just turn it off. That should restore the cutoff parts and give you the full frame of what you want to watch. Nothing is going to be trimmed off the edge. It's simple if you just know where to look. And if you want to know other places to look and other ways you can make your TV experience better, or just want shopping advice, read our reviews and features on PCMag.com.